interesting contributions from our panelists. There is the time to questions and answers, and there are already some questions. The first question is from Mohammad Abu Sobe from Egypt. The question is, given the European hardline position these days towards Iran, how should Joe Biden act for getting back to the nuclear agreement, to the JCPOA? So, Giulio, perhaps you could comment on that.
Thank you very much. Well, I believe that first of all, the hardline of the European Union vis-à-vis Iran it should be qualified, because there is it's very evident that there are 3 European capitals, and I think the European action, the European external action led by High Representative Borrell has been working since day one, but even before day one, with prospective Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Jake Sullivan, and other persons very close and very high in the administration now. They have been working to try to make a push, every sort of pressures on the new administration to try to convince it to come back right away, without practically right away since day one of the new presidency, to the JCPOA, more or less as it was. Under the so that is what we have been reading in the media, in the comments and position expressed by also European foreign minister, and this is not in line with what President Biden and his most important collaborators has been declaring, making known since the beginning. First, he has always said over the last few months and weeks that restarting a nuclear agreement should have been done under certain conditions. And the conditions were full implementation of the agreement, which have been run totally in another direction. There has not been full implementation of the agreement on the Iranian side, but full denial of the agreement, a total irrelevance of the obligation set by the agreements for the Iranians, because they have been continuing, and they've increased at a pace which was unheard before and seen before the enrichment of uranium. They've continued in their analysis on explosive needed to trigger the nuclear explosion, the nuclear fission. And they have been whatever they could, building new facilities underground without notifying the atomic energy in Vienna and so on. So the first condition of implementation by the agreement of the agreement still is not there, but they have created a new situation, the Iranians, that to recreate the condition of implementation, of certified implementation of the original agreement will take months and perhaps years. So the question is suspended according to the position expressed to President Biden. The second aspect is an aspect which, again, the interpretation of the Iranians are giving on many areas, like verification, but also about mingling in other affairs, about respect of resolution 2231 concerning missiles and the payload and so on, these missiles, is totally, again, they are doing the opposite of what they have been engaged and directed by the international community. So we are far away from the stars. There is an incredible pressure that Europeans are doing on the American administration. So it is expected that at least the watershed, as I said, represented by the Assadi case, could start putting some light at the end of the tunnel for the vision of the High Representative and also European foreign minister who still dream about what is the real situation in Iran. They give the impression of being really sleeping workers in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. There is a second question from Nazar Jaf from media from Kuwait. And the question is how the failed operation by Assadi can influence, can affect the future Iran-EU relations. Struan, perhaps you could comment on that.
Yeah, thanks, Alejo, and thanks to the questioner from Kuwait. I mean, clearly, as we have tried to lay out in this press conference, the attempt to kill and maim people on European soil, not only Iranian dissidents, but potentially hundreds of Europeans, men, women, even children attended the rally in Villepinte. Clearly, that has to have a major impact on future relations between the EU and Iran. We wait now for the verdict from the Antwerp court. And after that verdict, which based on the evidence has been quite clear that there must be guilty verdicts for all four of the perpetrators, particularly for the so-called diplomat, then we must await the announcement from Europe that they are holding the leadership in the government in Iran to account. These bomb plots, this terrorist network in Europe is not a network that has come about by chance. This is something that has been commanded and supervised from Tehran, from the highest echelons. So of course, this must change the relationship between the EU and Iran totally. And referring back to the previous question, the JCPOA, well, we're 5 years down the line from when the agreement was signed, and it was only a 10-year agreement. It can never be reinstituted, revised in any shape or form. In any case, it was a flawed agreement from the outset. It forbade the International Atomic Energy Authority, the agency, from entering any military establishments inside Iran. And of course, where do you think all the nuclear, secret nuclear, the developments were going on? They weren't taking place inside luxury hotels or supermarkets. They were all taking place inside military establishments where the Atomic Energy Agency had no access. So the whole agreement was completely flawed from the outset. It's now totally out of date. It never looked, as Giulio said, at the domestic oppression of the regime. It never tried to hold to account the proxy wars being waged with the Houthi rebels in Yemen, with the Shia militia in Iraq, with the backing for years and years of Bashar al-Assad and his bloody civil war in Syria, and the backing of the terrorist Hezbollah group in Lebanon. It never touched any of these issues. I think Joe Biden and Tony Blinken now will be very reluctant to approach the revision of the JCPOA without taking into account all of these wider subjects. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Struan. There is a third question. Also from Kuwait, by Nazar Jaf. What would Iran regime do if Assadi gets a long jail sentence? Do you think the threat Assadi made to the Belgian authorities in prison can materialize? Perhaps, Paulo, you could comment on that.
Well, thank you, Alejo, and thank you for the question. I think that is a very pertinent question. I think that we have to understand one thing, that Iran's threats are very much in proportion to the perceived victim influence capacity of these threats. So if the European institutions will not interfere with the judicial procedure, if justice is done, and if they clearly show that there is no sign whatsoever that they will be stepping back, I think Iran will not be tempted to promote terrorism and hostage taking, the usual thing that they have been doing over 40 years. But if there are any signs from the political establishment that, well, there might be a reason, there might be a compromise, then they will do it for sure. So I think that it is absolutely important for the European leadership to have a clear, strong, and united position. What I just spoke and described some minutes ago on the absolutely unexcusable position of the EEAS, of the European diplomacy, of not sharing the same declaration of the major countries' European leadership. This is absolutely contrary to our European interests, to our European security, and this opens the floor for Iran to try to take advantage of any perceived weakness from Europe. I hope that the European diplomacy will amend its ways as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Paulo. And now there is a question from Mrs. Vala Bajezer from Saudi Arabia Al Havas TV. The question is, given the current terrorist case, a case we've been discussing, how would Joe Biden administration take this into account to deal with Iran? Do you think that can influence possible lifting of sanctions? Julio, perhaps you can say something about it?
No, I have the impression that the new administration is proceeding very fast through executive orders on the pandemic, on climate change, on other issues, on Russia, perhaps. We have seen already some clear indication. On Iran, the impression that I have for the moment is that there is a caution. There is a background of caution in what they are doing. Because there is no doubt that over the last couple of years, especially, so there has been such an increase of aggressions in the Gulf, the seizing of tankers, attacks against Saudi Arabia, the situation in Yemen, but many other points that is going to be reported by the intelligence, the American intelligence structure to the new president and to his principal collaborators. And President Biden, he has a completely different personality, and I believe also a different way of listening to the people of the intelligence agencies of his own country. It's a completely different attitude from the one of the previous president. And we know very much somehow the comments that he was making, President Trump was making towards his intelligence agencies. So I have the impression that what Iran has been doing is leaving is going to have and is already having some consequences in the new administration deliberation. Of course, the inclination was very much the idea that it could continue the approach that President Obama took on Syria and on Iran, especially in 2013 and 2015. That impression was there during the campaign. But I wonder if even President Obama, in the present situation, would have been so easygoing about the nuclear deal.
Okay, thank you very much. And there is a last question for the moment. This is coming from Ahmad Adi from Kio Post. The question is, what can Europe do in face of calls to cooperate with Iran, given the worrisome situation in the region? Paulo, please.
Well, in view of the worrisome situation in the region, what Europe should do is exactly to counter the Iranian expansionism through terrorism, through all the militias and terrorist groups that it has in the region. That should be a main priority for the European policy. Regarding this agreement, I mean, I think it is some rationality will sooner or later come to both sides of the Atlantic. I mean, it is a complete absurdity to speak about to put in place again an agreement for very logical reasons, because this agreement had a calendar that was made for a time that has gone already. So it's meaningless in terms of the calendar. And of course, Iran did not apply nearly none of its clauses. So we could be speaking about the resurrection, but even the resurrection cannot close the eyes to reality. So this call of putting again the dead agreement is, I think it is clear nonsense and cannot be done simply. Sooner or later, the political responsibles will understand that Iran didn't change. And it is absolutely necessary to confront it, to stop its expansionism, and crucially, to make an alliance with the Iranian people against its oppressors, the Iranian theocracy. That's what I think Europe should do.
Thank you very much, Paulo. There is a new question. This question is from Charlie Peters from Arab News London. What measures ISJ thinks the European Union can introduce to combat Iranian regime's terrorism in Europe? Struan, please.
Yeah, thanks very much, Alejo. My Wi-Fi went down. I'm sorry I was absent for the last question.
I will repeat it.
But
Struan.
I am glad that.
Okay.
No, I heard the question.
Okay.
Thanks. It's a very good question. In fact, there are many things that the EU can do now to try to dismantle the Iranian regime's terrorist network. But the first thing we have to do is list the IRGC and its Jerusalem force, I think it was Paulo said this, list them as a terrorist organization. We have already listed the Ministry of Intelligence and Security from Iran as a terrorist organization. They indeed were the people who commanded the bomb attack with Assadollah Assadi, but they could not have undertaken such a mission without the permission of the president, the supreme leader, and the foreign minister. So the first thing we have to do is list the IRGC and the Quds Force, the Jerusalem Force, as terrorist organizations. The next thing we have to do is conduct a wide security surveillance process throughout Europe, in all of the countries that we know now from evidence that Assadi, as the terrorist chief, had been visiting, and establish who he visited, who he paid in euros. Hundreds of thousands of euros were paid out from the Iranian regime, and hold these people to account, try them where we have evidence for plotting terrorist attacks, and expel them after they have served their sentences and been punished, expel them from the EU. We should close all of the Iranian embassies in the European Union until we have an absolute guarantee from the Supreme Leader himself and from Rouhani, the president, that they will stop all further terrorist activities in Europe and elsewhere around the world. So the only language the mullahs understand is when you are tough with them. And we've got to stop speaking to them from a position of weakness, which simply emboldens them. And we've got to start talking tough. That's the language they will understand.
Thank you very much, Struan. And I think there are no more questions. So it's time to close this press conference that I hope it has been useful to clarify many aspects of the present situation of relations between the EU and the Iranian regime under the light of the Assadi trial, the terrorist attack, the foiled terrorist attack on Villepinte. To finish, to set some conclusions, I will use a recent letter that more than 20 ministers, former ministers from different European governments, from different countries, France, Germany, UK, Italy, Finland, Poland, Slovenia, Lithuania, many, Slovakia, Albania. At the initiative of Giulio Terzi, IAJ has promoted a statement by all these former ministers of these different European governments, people with experience that are now in a position to express their opinions out of partisan struggle. So it has a value. And all these former ministers have addressed a letter to the President of the Council, to Charles Michel, to the High Representative of the EU, Josep Borrell, also to the President of the Parliament, Sassoli. And there is one sentence that says all. It says, we need a necessary and deterrent action against the godfather of international terrorism in the world today. I mean, it cannot be stated more clearly. And also, they request all these European authorities for some action to be taken. And they request that Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif must be held accountable for his diplomats' proven role in plotting to blow up a peaceful rally in Villepinte. They also request that the activities of Iran's embassies and religious cultural centers need to be closely scrutinized, and the diplomatic relations with Iran be downgraded until Iran gives assurances that it will never engage in terrorism in Europe again. Also, they propose that the EU should designate the Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and the Revolutionary Guard as an organization, but not only part of it, in their entirety, as terrorist entities. Their agents and mercenaries that are now in European territory must be put on trial in case they have committed illegal action. They must be put on trial, and in any case, they must be expelled. So, on behalf of IJ and my three distinguished colleagues, I underline that this is exactly our position. This is what we expect from the European institutions, and I want to repeat once again, if they do not take action, if they remain passive, and after Assad's trial, nothing significant is done, the next attack will take place. Probably it will be even more damaging than the one that has been fortunately disrupted, and the responsibility will be of those that, with all the information in their hands, did nothing. Thank you very much, dear friends. See you next time. Thank you. Thank you very much for your participation. Bye-bye.